and I'm recording. All my channels are working apparently this time. If there's a problem, I'm going to scream. Had a little issue last time, so we're going to redo this again. The way I've thought about starting this was, I think if I recall last week, Fuzz, your position is basically like um, free will is an unanswerable question, and it's a bit, I don't know. You tell me if I'm off here. I did hear you just say something about like as long as we can define free will, then we can talk about free will. Does that make sense?
I have, I think, a better opener that I think should cover some of what you're talking about. That also, well, it kind of explains my position, but I think more broadly explains of what I think of free will in general.
Go for it, man.
Oh, okay. So the first time around, what I said was that with topics like free will, rather than give a yes or no, I would instead opt to explain the phenomenon at hand, so in this case, human behavior, and then let the person decide, hey, is what I described count as free will? Yeah, then we've got it. No, I guess we don't have it. It's fine with me. But I have another one. And basically, if you think about what it actually is, it is an outdated model of human behavior that existed at a time when we didn't have the scientific method. We didn't have neuroscience. So we needed to answer something because God was supposed to be good, people were supposed to be great, but people still did bad things. We need to put something in to explain this. Enter free will. It's this wonderful MacGuffin. What does it do? Don't worry about it. It's there to answer the plot of how can you both have a benevolent God, but people somehow can choose to do evil, whatever that means. The point is, you add this in, and now everything makes sense. So now, of course, we have a much better understanding of human behavior. So as far as free will is concerned, you basically have two choices. You can either get rid of this term completely and replace it with something like agency, or do what the compatibilists do and essentially redefine it into something more fitting for the times. It's going to be a little bit less potent. It's going to probably be something like the ability to like assess and make decisions and reflect on them, something like that. Regardless, it's going to be defined in such a way that humans have this capacity, hence why it's compatible with determinism. But to me, like, okay, I guess if you want to insist on calling it that, sure. I don't think we need this term anymore. But if we have to keep it, it's gonna have to be redefined in some way. So I guess you could call me a compatibilism. I guess I don't really care that much, but that's essentially my general opinion of it.
All right. Well, then this did kind of go where I kind of predicted it anyway, because I don't really disagree with that. That free will is just not the thing to be talking about. You know, I look at it in maybe a little bit of a different way, but yeah, I agree with you. So therefore, solved. It's done.
Easy.
We can move on to a new topic or open it up to the panel. How's that? There you go. Because I'm not here to talk about what I feel about it. So,
well, last time, as I recall, the word choice was tripping you up a little bit. And I think that's just because the way I would look at a word like choice, it's just essentially the output of a brain's decision making. But it seems that for some people, that word choice carries with it an extra bit of sauce that requires, I'm not even sure what, to be honest. Like, the more I think about that old model of free will, the more incoherent it seems. It's like, what is it? Like, if that's not, what do we talk about choice? Well, he has to be free of what? Exactly. I don't even know.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think it's even a disagreement there.
I think in some way free of previous causes. Like there's some separate directionality beyond the causes that cause everything else, right? This would be the gap that I would think of. But you're right, it is an old term. Free will is an extremely old term and concept before it was really, really formalized into something we know as free will today. But so that's true. But yeah, choice. Yeah, choice is a really like I think Casey and I actually marked up choice as one of the topics to talk about because from I don't know. I'm a record. I'm a repeating record. I'm a broken record, right? For me, choice fits within physical mechanics. So it's no different than any other physical mechanic that exists. It's still physical. It's on the physical substrate. It's doing the same things. You can abstract choice into things like set theory and the axiom of choice and decision making processes and all that. The problem with me is you can't disambiguate that from all the other physical stuff going on. So I think there are choices there and there are not choices there. So it is a complicated topic around choice and then agency and all that. For me, it's just mechanical, um, automatons in a sense.
That's mostly fine. So there's an example because there's a part of this that actually does bother me, and it's that phrasing of you couldn't have done otherwise. And I think this is just muddying the waters because how I would recommend phrasing it is that you could do otherwise, but you won't. Like you would not do otherwise in the same circumstances. So because the issue here is imagine if you're telling someone, oh yeah, you couldn't have made a different choice. Like if I'm an average person, I'm hearing like, wait, so I'm in an ice cream store. I got chocolate and vanilla. Is he telling me I literally can't choose one of these? That's nonsense, right? Because what that person is thinking is just like, well, they're both like live options in the sense that you're not physically barred from choosing. Like you can't choose to teleport to Guatemala, for instance, but you can choose either of these two things, meaning like these are paths you could follow if, let's say, your desires were different. You could if you wanted to.
Right.
Now, you would still want the same thing every time if we just wind back the clock. So there's no problem there. It's just that language of couldn't do otherwise makes it seem like you're like stuff happening to you is just random somehow. Like I chose this, I don't know why, but that's not quite. It's you know why, even if you knowing is ultimately deterministic.
Yeah.
There.
Casey says, did I make the decision versus could I have made a different decision if absolutely everything about the universe up until that moment had been identical? Yeah, this is a thing that I've been known to say in the past. This is a thing that Robert Sapolsky, G. Kunsho Bingo, has talked about this same thing, that exactly that. Like if everything is the same and if you backed up time to the moment to whatever moment and then replayed time, it's not going to be any different. You're still going to make the same decisions in that moment. Most likely.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
So,
hell, I can even strengthen his argument by saying, like, even if the universe isn't deterministic, like, you have to think of it this way: even if you're made out of like 10 to the 20 particles or whatever, you're really only gonna make like maybe 5 different decisions. So even if there is some slight variation, it will never be enough to actually alter a major decision, right? But the idea that, oh yeah, if the universe isn't deterministic, now I'm more free somehow, doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. If anything, I would think I'm less free.
Yeah.
That my decisions are somehow more random? Where's the freedom here?
Hey, do you mind if I let other people up here come up and we just start going off, or you still want to keep going? Bring it on.
Come to my warm embrace.
Come at me, bro. All right, you guys can come up and we can talk openly. If it gets a little rowdy, we might have to implement a little control system, but let's just see if we can maintain a level of order, a bit of order here. Has anybody got any hot burning questions that they want to bring up right now? Looks like Casey raised their hand, so let's go. Come at me, bro.
Okay, I mentioned earlier I do have some stuff written down, and it's kind of written in a way. Let me just kind of copy and paste. Share it in the chat here, because yeah, I shifted from last week where I was kind of trying to make an argument for the compatibilism, but it's very confusing. But what I ended up like looking into is, yeah, if we're differentiating these two questions, did I make the decision versus could I have made a different decision. I think that was the sticking point for me, because I kept getting tripped up on this idea. Like, we have all this evidence to show that humans are capable of deliberation, that we do, and we can talk about the definition for choice. But this is all kind of within a spectrum where if you're being coerced into something, is it you making that choice or are you being forced into it? And the same can be said of like how we are constrained by our environment. I can't choose to sprout wings and go fly somewhere. I think that's kind of a weird, and maybe I'm straw manning, but that's the kind of vibe I get from the traditional libertarian version of free will, if we do define it as the capacity of humans to consciously choose their actions, shape their destinies, and hold moral responsibility for their behavior. That's so broad that I have that sticking point, at least one that I've found so far. So I guess to start off with, what do you guys think of, like, Fuzzician, you were mentioning last week, starting with agreeing to our definitions, and anybody else on the panel, if you guys want to propose your own definition that we can work with as far as the just free will to start off with.
Sure.
Thoughts? Prayers?
I mean, I would look at something like that and think, like, does this lead to different consequences than what I think? And it doesn't look like it does. So as far as I'm concerned, this is fine. Like, we arrive at the same place, but maybe through different vocabularies. But that's fine with me, as long as we both understand what the outcome should be. Now, the whole consciously making of decisions, this is one bit where Sapolsky does make very important insight, which is there are aspects influencing your decision that you are absolutely not even aware of.
Yep.
And this has been shown in experiments with, like, the smelly garbage, causing some people to, like, be more anti-immigration or something. It was really wild, but it does make some sense, where if you don't know that you're being affected and you are not the kind of person who can analyze his own beliefs, you'll just react, basically. So here's a bumper sticker courtesy of the physician. Wise people assess their beliefs. Fools merely justify them. Put that on your car. We got him. And so that's what I think he's referring to, that kind of person, the fool, will smell something, have no idea that this is happening, and then feel that, the hungry judge is the same idea, feel worse and not know why, and will just come up with some justification. Hey, I consciously chose blah, blah, blah. Well, you think that, but if we didn't put that in the room, maybe you would have made a different decision. So it's almost like, if you want to have free will, you kind of have to work for it a little bit. You have to overcome some of the, like, programming issues with your own brain, and all that really means is become more aware of what's actually going on in your head. To be, you can become freer, I guess, in the sense that you'll be less easy to manipulate by outside factors like that.
Being free in the sense of, that you are able to make decisions based on your own preferences with the least amount of coercion from the environment, is how I'm kind of thinking of it. So if I'm standing at the grocery store and somebody's putting a gun to my head and saying you have to choose chocolate, like, that influences what I would have chosen otherwise based on my own preference. If the judge was able to choose to take a lunch break earlier in the day, have a few different breaks throughout the day, would they make that? Would they? I'm trying to think of how would you word it, Brian? Like, as far as evaluating how they're feeling in a given moment and thinking, okay, I need to take this break. Maybe they're not choosing it. I don't know. I'm still kind of confused where you landed on that word choice, but.
Well, I want to make sure nobody else has anything to say, because I could talk a lot about that. But Hizzle, Connor, Papa, Nivik, Bueller, Bueller. All right, so where do I start? I think the best way I've come to sum it up is what the same thing I copied in the text the other day, the same thing that's written down in the Philosophy Bros chat below, but the fact that we can't disambiguate the action versus the intention of doing the action. And that's really the big contention right there is, do we choose to do things or do we just do things and it seems like we choose to do things, right? I'm of we don't choose. It's just things just happen. um, and that
How do
aligns with
you?
a lot of the things like physics. And another question that I ask is, where does this choice start? Where's the beginning of it? Like, where do we trace evolution back and have the beginning of choice? Because it's like you said, rocks don't make choices, right?
Well, they don't do
So,
anything, strictly speaking.
well, I'm just making an extreme
They
comparison to say at some point in time this choice falls off the radar of a thing that seems rational to talk about,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So where did
So,
So
it
in
start?
yeah, because we were.
Did it start in protozoa when they had to make a choice to, or the cellular interactions at those levels? Did it start when we started having simple, stimulus response nervous systems? Did it start when we started having these complex metacognitive systems that can think about thoughts and respond to thoughts not only from stimulus and action? I mean, where did this whole thing of choice start? And then if it's all mechanics, and if you think about the complexity of all the stuff going on in order for you just to accomplish an action in any moment that has to line up to that moment, how do you disambiguate those things when every bit of evidence up until that moment says everything is predictable and determined?
I so I have a kind of a counter question to that because I do have like ways that I disambiguate these things. We got into it a bit
Sure,
last week
sure.
as far as like if something is an, and we were talking a bit yesterday too about if something's an inanimate object like a rock, it doesn't, it's matter that is being influenced by the environment. It has no sentience, no consciousness, no sapience. And we, yeah, again, last week we were going into those. But if a how so how would you differentiate something that is reacting to its environment, such as when I go to get my checkup and the doctor's doing the little hammer thing around my knee, and I have a little, hopefully, have a reaction to that, versus um, me taking a little bit of time to contemplate when I'm walking around in the grocery store and I'm like, do I want to get ice cream today or not? Do you see a difference between those things? And if so, how do you describe them? You don't see any difference. Is that
No,
right?
I don't see a difference because it's all things that emerge from all the physical shit that's going on. Um, that's where I am with it. That's you know.
maybe a better way to ask is, but do you think there are meaningful consequences for differentiating those two phenomena? Because I think Sapolsky would say yeah. So, like, in the case of the knee thing,
Yeah.
what's interesting here is that this happens to you. So you're like, oh, my leg did this thing. And then it happens again. Oh, it happened again. It's like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to prevent it this time. Oh, wait, it happened
Right.
again. Like, wait, what's happening?
Well,
I'm not in control at all.
so
Yeah,
there's two things that
exactly. Yeah.
Sapolsky has a favorite phrase that he says that we we draw arbitrary lines in the sand and call them facts, right? And then we put too much importance on those facts and forget that they're just arbitrary lines in the sand. That's where, like, we can still understand science and advancement and information and all these things. And the funny thing is, all those things say the same thing almost overtly, minus some areas of philosophy that are still questionable, like free will, or determinism for that matter. I'm not saying determinism is true. It's just that all the evidence says it's true. There's very little evidence to the contrary, and for me, everything else has the burden of proof. Um, if that makes sense.
guess this is where I slide in with one of my new pet phrases called levels of description, which you already know what that is. But it's basically like saying the universe is deterministic and saying you're making choices. I don't actually see any conflict with these because they're both describing the same system progressing from state to state.
Yeah.
It's just that in quantum physics, there is no you, there's no choices, there's just whatever, like vectors in Hilbert space or however that goes, right? But that's not how we talk because it's not very helpful. So when we're saying you're making a choice, we're accepting a different vocabulary to describe that same system. And at this level, there are agents that make decisions,
Right.
And that's really it. So there now back to the point of the knee thing. There, at the end of the day, the reason that's going to matter is because of the consequences, and by that I mean, one is a behavior you literally can't prevent yourself from doing, whereas the other kind of behavior, if you're told, "Hey, maybe try doing something else," you actually could do the something else. Like choose a different flavor of ice cream. You can't choose to not be afraid of a spider if you have like arachnophobia, right? That's just a thing that happens to you. So we wouldn't like penalize you for that because what's the point? It's not gonna change your behavior. Likewise, penalizing you for the leg thing, like again, that's just gonna happen. But penalizing you for choosing the wrong ice cream can actually get you to choose a different flavor of ice cream. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing. Okay, maybe the phobia thing wasn't a great example, but you get the point. It's something that you experience. It's like, or like you get some kind of a PTSD reaction. Like I didn't want to feel like this. It just happens, right? But the point is, for our day to day, what parts of human behavior can be influenced by us shaping the environment around us to get a different outcome? That's ultimately all we're doing here. But the reason, for instance, why something like punishment still has to exist, it's essentially us fulfilling that promise. Hey, bad thing happens to you if you do this thing. Well, if you do it anyways, well, if we don't do the punishment, then it's not going to serve its role of deterrent. Pretty good? Everybody cool? So, like, I don't think we actually have any, like, the whole issue that you're having with the whole choice. Like, I don't even really care about it on that level because I think the consequences ultimately are going to be the same. Like we would both agree to the same policies, for instance, and the same focus in like criminal justice ultimately. That's why I don't worry that much about like those words.
Let's Casey, do you have anything else? Maybe we'll go around the room and see if anybody else has anything to say.
Because I think I'm mostly in agreement with us there. Yeah, that it's to maybe phrase it a different way, like how we can condition ourselves. Because there's a lot of extreme examples you could bring into play. We have like specific reflexive actions that I think some of those as well can be conditioned. But a lot of that is like, I don't know. I got to get my thoughts together for some of this. So other people, please step in.
Yeah. Well, I guess I just want to be clear. I kind of agree and I kind of disagree still, I'm like, I understand these phenomena are thing that we study, but there's still no disambiguating the doing from the intention of doing there. So for me, that's not enough evidence to say that there's some, I don't know. But yeah, the studies exist by all of our means and understanding.
Oh, we got something from Benson.
Oh, Ben's
Let's
got
hear it.
Hey guys. If you've already covered this, or if this has been covered in another debate, or this is a simple topic within the topic, I apologize in advance. So am I understanding correctly that with a determinist worldview, that people would submit that even though someone commits murder, like there were many sources that caused them to that, state of chaos or however you would describe it? So it's hard to blame the person, or do I have that wrong?
Anybody?
Well,
That is, I know that is Brian's position. It's not mine. Yeah.
I was so this
Or
is
at
this is
least
the case where you can come in and basically just break this down. So like when you say do we blame them, let's wonder what's the purpose of blame? Like what are we actually doing? We're basically assigning again, it's operating at that level. When we're blaming you, all we're really saying is you are the person that we have to deal with to prevent to address this behavior. Now, whether you know you're truly responsible, like I don't think that ultimately matters. You still have to be dealt with in some way. So whether you call that blaming people or you want to assign a different word, I don't really mind. It's just that the way we generally mean blame is you are the agent are the cause of this. Now, of course, there can be mitigating circumstances, like if you have like a mental problem that we recognize that okay, that's different from someone who.
But that's the minority, right? Most people don't.
It's very difficult to prove that there's.
Yeah.
But because I'm in the same position that I like. Someone was bringing up earlier that like a hard determinist would be doing away with moral responsibility. I don't think that is true for some determinist positions. I think that depends on. This is where like a lot of philosophy jargon kind of confuses me, but like I don't take on a moralist or a moral nihilistic point of view. As far as I know, I do think that we can hold people. What?
So why are you gaslighting me?
I'm just saying, like that's my position. Please feel free to, if you want to differentiate yours. But for me, yeah, to say somebody is responsible for this action, it's not to say that they didn't have all these prior experiences that led them up to that. It's not to say that, so much about their environment could have like led to them thinking that this was a good decision. Maybe they deliberated on it, or it was the only decision they could make, yada, yada. It's still, this person did that action, like Fuzz said, and we're going to say, okay, there has to be a consequence to prevent this from happening again, as well as recognizing these are things as a society we don't want to happen at all as much as possible, so we can prevent that. And I think that does, to some degree, require a moral system that we can at least have some agreements toward, murder bad, whatever, however you want to, put words towards these things. But so I put responsibility. I think there's an accountability aspect. I think people are very capable of being able to change based around that. I think they're capable of taking responsibility most of the time outside of, a very extreme circumstances. I hope that kind of answers for you where I'm at, but it looks like Anas has something he'd like to bring in.
Yeah, just real quick, Anas, just to close that, my concern is always, the fact that you just somewhat mentioned, Casey, about, crime in society and sources. And while you can talk about things like poverty and, various traumatic experiences people absolutely have gone through, you know what I mean? At the end of it, there still seems that there has to be some decision to not harm others. I don't know the determinist positions well enough to really decipher through that, but that would be my main concern is like, hey, like there still has to be accountability. Otherwise you can't have, I don't know that you can have civilization.
Yeah, that I would disagree with, but I agree with harm. But anyways, who Anas was next?
Ooh, I kind of want to go back to that one, but we'll shelve it for now.
Yeah, put a pin in it because I'll come back to it if nobody else has anything to say.
Hi guys.
Hey man.
The discussion reminded me about the paradox of choice of paradox or paradox of choices, because when we have many things that we need to choose from, even though we're selecting some preferable to us, maybe we blame ourselves about it.
The
But I need
paradox
to
of
say,
choice, I got that part, but could you go a little bit more into the last part? I missed it a little bit.
when we have many choices in front of us and we select one of them, maybe we blame ourselves after the selection,
Gotcha. Yes. Yes.
because sometimes it will be like I do that, but I don't know what what the consequences after it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if I need to choose to practice with you now and to say something here, but I lack of confidence, maybe I will compare myself with your accent, with your capability, with your communication skills. So maybe I will go with the limitation of confidence. I will go with the something like only I be this defensive, because I don't find myself like there is a self acceptance, because I need social acceptance more than self acceptance. Then I will go with blaming myself, lashing myself maybe sometime. That's what I need to say, because it will start from within. You need to accept yourself as is and develop it iteratively, because this is your choice. Otherwise, you are jumping to conclusion, jumping to the other place. Maybe you can't develop based on your capability, or lack of maturity debt, because maturity debt is something, consequences that you have in front of you but you can't see.
It reminds me of that the dog and human, save the dog or the human paired, the thing we were hypothetical we were talking about the other day, Casey,
Mhm.
and other people were talking about on Pangburn. It's a good point. Anas, thank you. Anybody else? I don't know. Do you want to
I
go
kind
back
of
to that?
have,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, I kind of have a response to that. Again, I'm wanting to make sure everybody's able to get some thoughts in here.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, to respond to that, Anas, yeah. So a lot of therapy modalities will focus on that, of like learning to accept yourself and where you're at, and not necessarily like there are comparisons we can make that aren't going to cause somebody to kind of spiral into a level of blame or self-loathing that is harmful to them, and it prevents them from being able to move towards like a better version of themselves, maybe that they would like to have, that they are capable of. And I think this is all kind of the balance of like what is within our control and what is not. Which reminded me at some point, Brian, I wanted to get into the idea of like locus of control and how that changes as we get older. But yeah, I think there's a balance to be had throughout our lives of what we are able to do for ourselves, and then how can the community help us or harm or whatever. I don't know if that helps to kind of expand on what you were saying, because yeah, I think that's a great point.
Physician.
I mean, I don't have much to add to this. The quote by Carl Rogers on that previous thing. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just waiting for the because I actually have two things that both of which you said that I want to kind of go back to, but we'll do that when we
Surprise. Yeah. I mean, I'm okay. Does anybody else have anything? Brett or Hizzle, you said you're going to remain quiet. Papa Smurf, you've been quiet. You got anything you want to say? But yeah, Fuzz, this is pretty much your show. So if you got questions, bring them up, man.
Okay, so the first one was so back to your view of choice. Like, do you not think there is any difference between voluntary and involuntary action?
Voluntary and involuntary are merely.
So the involuntary being like the hammer thing,
Yeah.
and yeah. Okay, cool.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. I understand unconscious behaviors and that realm of thought. Well, I have a understanding of it. I don't understand it, but um, I don't know. The simplest way I can say it, man, is again, there's the. I hate sounding so repetitious. I just try to look for the quickest, easiest ways to express where I am with things like control. We have calculation. We have computer programs that have, I mean, they're control. They have certain types of control. Is that the kind of control we're talking about? Because with a human, there's really no difference. It's just lots of those little control operations going on at one point in time. So many that we can't calculate them or their outputs. So no, for the control is still no different. Like unconscious behavior, conscious behavior, they're just phenomena of what we are in the way we exist. And maybe I can break that down further and say like the sciences we know about it, right? Like we have sleep studies that with MRIs and fMRIs and transcranial magnetic stimulation and all these things that tell us what our brains are doing at any point in time, electromagnetically, neurotransmittically, hormonally, other physical ways to track it. So if we're in an unconscious state, we have like resemblances of what a brain looks like when it's in an unconscious state. What form of unconscious state is it in? Is it in a deep one, like when you're in a deep sleep and you're really not doing anything? Your brain's pretty much just shut down. And I think they say your default mode network is something that's the only thing that's pretty much active at those times. And then you go into like an REM state where you're sort of on maybe between a conscious or an unconscious state. And we have like data, tons and tons of data that track each one of these sequences of each one of these things to define what those things are. Other than those things in which we track them in those arbitrary ways with our arbitrary measuring systems and we can read them and predict them, that's really all it is to me. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
No, it does, but it sounds like you're still operating at a different level of description because according to physics, yeah, I would actually grant you all of that.
yeah.
But for the purposes of society, do you think it makes sense to assign some difference to those two at all?
Well, it does in our current systems, like you said, with the hungry judge effect, right? Since we have sort of almost unregulated human emotions and biases operating in very critical systems that can decide people's fates of their lives and their livelihood. We should be aware that we have conscious and unconscious behaviors that tell us if I'm hungry, I'm probably going to give you a harder sentence versus if I'm not and I just ate, I might be willing to give you a lighter sentence on average. We should be aware of those things, sure. I think they're also existing in a flawed system that's not taking into account all the things that led up to those moments that then give us the outcomes. I'm like, in my opinion, quarantine is like the worst we can do to somebody, and even in that, it has to be humane quarantine, not just throw you in a cell and throw away the key and, or possibly consider killing you, the death penalty to take you out of burden of whatever that would be. Even that's complicated, but I don't know. Does that answer any questions?
I mean, I can see exactly where you're sitting. I'm just wondering why it seems like, and I'm trying to like kind of pull you over the rope a little, but it's like
Okay,
I'm getting
okay.
some
Sorry
tension.
if I'm
But at the
deviating.
same time, maybe that's fine because again, I don't think we disagree on the consequences. Like you understand that what people mean by that difference and why law cares about these things.
Yes.
So like, yeah, that's cool. Like, yeah, and on the physics side, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just all particles or whatever, so that's not a problem. And it also seems like, because this actually ties into that second point a little bit where, was it Benson who said like that we need, how did he phrase it exactly? You need it for accountability, or like society can't function without accountability. And I think I was initially going to say, oh, he's of course right. But then I'm thinking, well, technically, with a sufficiently robust understanding of neuroscience, you could probably create a society where the concept of crime and justice is entirely different, because we now can basically prevent almost all crime. Because if you have mental issues, we would know about it already and we'll have addressed it right then and there,
Maybe,
rather than waiting for the problem to happen
possibly.
and then locking you away, right? So yeah, I suppose you could have a civilization like that, but can we do that right now?
No.
Like, do we have a better option than what we're currently doing? I will agree that shift more emphasis on rehabilitation and recognizing that some people just have nothing but shitty decisions to choose from. No one is like choosing the path of evil or whatever. That's that old model. Doesn't make sense anymore. You give people better options, they'll make better decisions, right?
We still have a lot of really absurd areas, right, where, like, for instance, the amount of incarcerated in the United States and the general conditions in which they have to exist, like, this is all because of a low-level judgment system. We're legalizing drugs that people still have criminal records for. You know, I mean, we are emerging. I mean, we're slowly emerging to a higher resolution judgment system. I just don't think we're there yet. We're still using a lot of pretty low resolution moral justification.
Yeah, we still very much have like retributive justice in the US. And there's not a lot of emphasis on preventative measures because, there's so much we do know about being able to provide people with like children having access to food and shelter and all that stuff, and there's so much that I think when we like what's a good way to word it, when you put so much blame onto somebody when it's really not, where there's so much that is out of their control, like for a family that has kids, they can't necessarily control what type of job they get, what jobs might be available in their area. So are we going to blame them for having kids when they're making less than
uneducated? Yeah,
all these things, like so much of that can move us towards this space where we will have less and less. I think hypothetically, and it seems the research would pan out to, we would reduce crime quite a bit, but getting everybody to be kind of on board with that is a tricky part. But I was going to also throw out, there's like a very extreme examples that we're still kind of working out. Are there genetic conditions or predispositions for people to choose a path of evil, or is that conditioned? I think there is there's still that portion of, that's a very low fraction of percent of society that they may just be genetically disposed to that. And it would be a bit harder, even if we have all these preventative measures in place, unless we have, you brought up last week, Physician, about like, if we were to, or was it you that said something about like giving people a shot to just...
that was my thought experiment, that you take a shot and it cures evil. I don't know much detail, but the idea is that if you had mental issues like that, you take the shot, fixed, you're now a normal person.
Right. Yep. And there was something that I wanted to tie into, Brian, that I think that's the type of consequence for that person. It's something that they may choose for themselves, but society might choose it for them if they're just showing themselves over time to just continually make these choices despite having all these other choices in front of them. Is there fault in somebody being like genetically predisposed? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, I still think they are, again, like if they have all the other options in mind, if we have preventative care and all these things, and they aren't electing to make decisions going towards like addressing that type of behavior, I'm going to fault them for behavior, not for just who they are as a global characteristic, if that helps.
See, I would just say throw away the word fault and just prevent them from causing harm on society. This is what I call quarantine. When you have people who can't just interact with society without the high potentials of causing harm to themselves or other people. I mean, even themselves is questionable for me. You know my stance on that personally, but we don't need to go down that road. Willing to concede on that one for now. But
I see a string. So fault. It's interesting you bring up fault because this is another one of those loaded words where it's like, yeah, like all you could do with fault is just redefine it into just the person we have to lock up or quarantine, as you say. But of course, when people use that word, there is some implied sense of you really are a bad person, and I want to be able to feel superior to you. Yeah,
I think it's impossible to avoid the consequence that there are going to be some people in our society that just have the intention of doing other people harm for whatever reason. You know.
Yeah, I would like to. I would like a better system that is able to identify those people, early on, if it's, antisocial behavior or stuff that happens in school.
Agreed.
But also, admittedly, because this is like where's the gray areas, like if someone is literally, like Casey was saying, is predisposed, like there's been a lot of violence in their family history, and they are exhibiting those same antisocial behaviors and other stuff, I think that's something that should be observed. I wonder how many people could say, like, commit various crimes out of desperation, poverty and whatever else it might be, because that's a group who I would want to neutralize that, where, like we were kind of saying, the economic opportunities that they simply do not have based off of the bad luck of the draw of where they ended up on Earth, right? What body they were born into. That to me is like something that is solvable when people are like, well, why are they doing this or going to get in trouble or whatever else it is? It's like, well, where is the sustainable practice to help them feel like they can get out of that? You can give them all the inspirational talks you want, and talks and moral shaming and stuff like that. But, when going to do a deal for a friend, some kind of shady deal, right, could earn you several $100s in a matter of like, a half hour or an hour. And the wage of a given job at like Target or wherever else it is just like a fraction of it. And it's so much more time. You can spit ethics at them all you want and stuff like that. But I think it's a very privileged position to a given degree to say that, like, oh yeah, like they just need to act more moral. It's like, no, there are such areas as economically depraved to where people would be more susceptible to various crimes. Admittedly, there are still those that do harm to others, but I wonder how many, especially young boys / men, go to do certain crimes or whatnot because they're literally in a literal state of desperation. They don't see any other, to go to law school, go law school, engineer, whatever else it is, for a job that's like higher paying than, whatever minimum wage jobs they would start, takes a long time. It assumes they have money for college, which many people don't, because that's risen, right? So I would want to see funds put into various areas of society, because I think really it's not just money, but it is partially money, to a given degree. But I'll stop there. So yeah.
If I can nitpick, because I know this is often brought up about like the amount of money that we put into like, what is it for each like student, that we've found that it's not just how much money you put into a school, but how are you implementing certain programs. So yeah, and we're finding a lot of research. There's been a lot of studies on how we can better spend some of this, and it might not mean that we spend more so much as we allocate it in ways that are more effective. For things like...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I lost it. If we're like, focusing... like psychology in ways that are age appropriate. When we teach preschoolers about the idea of consent, we're not talking about sex. We're talking about giving each other hugs. and we steadily keep that as a part of the curriculum as they get older and older and keep these topics in mind, yeah, that I think it can help, but it is still, like Brett said, we're talking about having like a holistic approach on society that like if somebody's really struggling at home and their family is modeling behavior, it's hard to put those things together, which one is going to serve me in this moment, because when I'm at home I have to act in a way to survive, and when I bring that into school, like it's going to keep coming up because it's just what I'm having to do. But anyway, yeah.
Fuzz?
So I guess I have a comment about sort of like the whole thing we've been talking about. It kind of reminds me of like these interactions where like, you know how I said in the beginning that free will is this outdated model? It feels like some people are still operating on it today, where to them it's like, yeah, no, you're just a bad person, you suck, go fix it. And it's really weird because like I can tell you with my own family, some of them are of the mindset, well, no, these people are just bad people, right? And me trying to explain, look, if you just gave them better opportunities, they would just cooperate. But for whatever reason, it's like they just don't like this idea of bringing people back. They just want to like throw them out and be done with it. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I think you're right. This idea of like free will is just, it's a lack of understanding of psychology to a large degree. It's like, well, you should just know to do better. And it's like, well, people can logically understand that some behavior is not helpful to society, but to be able to really ingrain that into our full body and to be able to like actually go through with actions that are in line with that, it can be really difficult. I mean, yeah, if you're raised in a family where you're just modeled this type of behavior, even with, like I was saying, when you go to school and they're talking about, oh, well, you need to ask for consent to give somebody a hug or whatever. We shouldn't hit people. You shouldn't lie. If it's so ingrained, like you can tell somebody not to do that, but when they keep doing it, like, are you going to just, oh, sorry, I'm going to get distracted here. I forget where I was going with that anyways, but yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Anybody? I was just going to jump back to the education thing, and I'd add another layer. And Casey, you covered some of it, which is that like you also have to understand that throwing money at education also means like if the kids are from a broken home, you're going to have a hard time educating them. A broken, neglectful, abusive, whatever home. And that's something that often gets overlooked in a lot of these studies that we do. They're just looking at let's throw money at the school, the community of the school, the things we can do while they're in school, but there's really nothing really being done about the homes that they're going back to, or if they even have a home to begin with, a stable, steady one. I think that's probably possibly the biggest component here. Um,
Yeah, it's a,
How would
you.
how would
A
you
lot.
fix the
Some
broken
people.
home issue?
We got a new
Like
person.
you
It's a
saying
new
it's like
person.
I mean, I have an answer, but I want to give other people an opportunity to speak. So, yeah.
How
I
do you
mean,
fix the broken family?
I mean like so what I mean is like yes, I agree with you, but I'm saying is like how would you do you think it's more of a thing where you have to uh, like help their circumstances out or something like to help them
Yeah.
get on their feet, or
Yeah.
are you saying like you would have to like interrupt, like get them the kid out of that situation? I'm curious
Maybe
which direction you were going.
that's always a possibility. If they're in an abusive home that is just deemed abusive to the child, then not being in that environment helps. It might have some negative outcomes, but and then yeah, and then the other thing is change people's
Depends.
circumstances so they're not coming from homes that don't have food or money or enough to put stuff on the table and have a dignified life in of some way, shape, or form. Uh, and that's a thing that there's not a direct profitable result from. That's why it's not a popular a popular
That's
choice.
that's kind of that's what an interesting thing to me when it gets brought up, because like I think when we do invest in a healthy, educated society, like it takes time to see that, but I think that does translate into better profits.
I agree.
It's just that a lot of educated people will say, well, the profits need to be distributed a bit better so that the average worker is making more, yada yada. But I did want to nitpick a bit that like we do have, like, there are degrees of abuse where if somebody is in consistent imminent danger and it is not changing, we might go ahead and remove the kid from the home. But what we want to do more often than not is to try to talk to the parents, get them involved in programs, and to prevent them from continuing that abuse. More often than not, we do want to keep those families together because it's not very good for a kid to be taken away. Taking away their attachment figures like that can cause a lot more issues later on down the road, and in the immediate. It's just very disruptive. Kids benefit a lot from having, and Brian and I have disagreed about like levels of routine, what is best for that individual, like their body, but on average, yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but I've seen many cases where that stuff is sort of known, and you go talk to, I have a lot of educators in my circle, and you go talk to these parents, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. Nothing changes.
Right. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. I mean, you can have requirements of them. They are required to start attending classes. And again, if that behavior does not change, like what else can we do to provide the kid with something better? Are they able to access therapy? Do they have some other type of support? And we have to evaluate. It's a cost benefit analysis. Like, at what point do we decide to take the kid out of that home? Because it is just completely disrupting their life, and they're being so held back compared to like if they were to stay, are they still going to be able to overcome that? It's
a tough situation, right? Because it's not like you can just rip kids out of their home like at will, right? It's like such a dilemma.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. My AirPods have been weird lately. I would submit that even when you share those pieces of information with parents, guardians, or elders in given family homes, many do not simply possess the time to go to those classes. Some might. It depends on their living status. Maybe they're disabled, or they have some other scenario where they're not working full time, whatever else it might be. But I know plenty of cases where the given parents that are struggling with various things, and then our school gets involved, or our counselors have to get involved, or whatever else it might be, they simply don't have the time to go to those classes. They're working a 12 to 14 hour, a 10 to 14 hour day on very little salary. It seems like they are in a constant state of fight or flight. And even though you can get a lot of people to agree, where I actually have a lot of parents who do care about their kids' education and want them to do well in school, if they grew up in a given household with various, styles of parenting that were once popular or accepted and are now, proven by science and psychology not to be good for kids whatsoever, it's very difficult to make those changes. And obviously, like, that's, physical abuse is a much more sensitive topic, is more different than that. But
hold on, what do you mean by classes?
Classes like
so I know
class.
I know plenty of immigrant parents who come here uneducated and discipline their kids just fine.
Yeah, and I think it varies depending on the place. I would never want to put an overgeneralization for any group of people.
So if you why do you think they need classes for basic basic things like making sure their kids stay out of trouble, don't go to school, like basic things why would you need an education for that?
Interesting, because I would start to want to dissect what you mean by by immigrants coming in who discipline their family. Let's talk about what is good and bad discipline.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Sure.
I would.
What I mean by that is there's plenty of cases where immigrants come over here uneducated, not, no school, like not even high school,
sure.
and they know the basics of basically sticking to, doing what is good at a basic level, right? Like staying out of trouble. They can identify what trouble is, what types of kids, maybe they shouldn't be hanging around with. Like that doesn't take that's like more it doesn't take an education, right?
I disagree. But Fuzz, you got something you want to say?
So, what I
Nobody
think.
goes to school for that.
So this isn't about school. It's that presumably, assuming I'm understanding you, those immigrants probably already went to classes, and all I mean is they learned how to do that from maybe their parents, whereas these like
Their
in the
culture,
US
yeah.
couples, they have nothing. Like so they need where else are they gonna learn it? They didn't have parents to teach them this. Their homes were just as broken as the homes they're giving
Oh,
their
it's
kids.
it's called it's called just no, like it's life experience, right? You should, by the time you're adult, you should know these basic things, correct or no?
Where do you get them? Where do you learn them? Is
I
the
think
question.
personally, most people, if they read
Give me
through
a
some,
little bit of an olive branch here, please.
I think just really quick, I think if most parents today read through like a good quality set of parenting books, they'd probably learn a hell of a lot of stuff that they didn't know before.
Oh, totally agree. I'm
So
talking about
yeah,
basic level things.
right. But is that sufficient? Is basic level things sufficient? You know,
Well, it's necessary.
maybe,
It's
maybe,
a it's it's
maybe
it's
it's a
like
foundation.
order zero.
I mean, I would personally hope parents would be educated to the max about raising children if possible. I think that's going to lead to the best
Oh,
outcomes.
100%. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
So anybody else? I'm sorry, I don't want to steal the microphone. Brett.
Um, I can give an example. You want me to just call you user? I know, brother. I know who
I'm
you are
Barry.
since
You
we've
can
talked
call me
before.
Barry.
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 Okay. So Barry, I have examples in the past, and here's the thing: it's not a thing of better than or uneducated, educated, quote unquote. If I said it that way, I'm not trying to sound condescending or misspeak. But I have met parents before who there is an inability to understand how certain things that they go to teach their kids have a underlying psychological effect that modern science and psychology says is not healthy for kids, whether it's views on girls and telling them how they have to act, like things like purity culture, whether it is certain ideas of excusing various behaviors, not just with boys, but just like certain behaviors that they said, well, we grew up with that and there was nothing wrong with that. And it's not to say that the teacher or the school or any other place has all the answers, because that's not always the case. But sometimes, like, I'm going to interact with some fellow adults, and I realize that we're coming from two different life perspectives. And I think that at times, like I mentioned before, because of the amount of things they've had to do in life and whatnot, um, that the reach of where they've been able to access with various information can be somewhat limited. And it's one thing if it's like trying to talk to them about, future, like college or not college, careers and stuff like that. That's all, the family talks about it, the kids talk about with each other, right? But if it's something like with social potential, like social behavior, or like I said, like perpetuating ideas with, women in their families that see women as like secondary, that kind of stuff, like I think at times is people don't may not intend it, but it can have like detrimental effects on those people. Is that for every single family? No. Is it for like every single interaction from the past that quote unquote has to be changed? No, admittedly. But I'll stop there because I know that was a lot of tangents. So
I would just say I follow what you're saying, and I agree. I think those type of things would definitely help, but I don't see those as the primary source of like failure or success in society. They probably have a second order effect of like how you might fit in or the ease of how you might fit in socially, but primarily keeping you on the right path, out of trouble, on the right path towards, you know, work ethic, things like that. I don't think those basically drive that. I don't think those are the primary effects, sources of those things.
Yeah, for me, it's the mitigation of the consequences of those things that cause all the other things. That's why I think they're the most important. That's the thing that's easily targetable at a macroscopic level of understanding, rather than putting the onus on the people or the persons to make the right choices, you know, or better choices, or whatever. Or some people are just destined to fall out of the system because it doesn't adapt to them or whatever. So yeah, I think that is the place to start at the foundations. That's just not the most quickly profitable, in my opinion. That's why it's not an interesting thing. It's not the most quickly profitable way to make a society.
just so you guys know, and Barry, I don't
So you're
think this has too
real
much.
quick. Are you trying to say that like everybody should have like a one size fits all philosophy on life and teach that to the kid?
A one size fit. What does that mean?
Well, I'm hearing about like these stereotypes and, you know, going to education on certain things. Um, so like even those things, it's not like there's one track, right? There's not one way to do things, right?
No,
So
I agree. It's a complicated set of things. Education is one piece of it. Fixing homes is one piece of it. Giving basic levels of dignity and services to all people and making opportunities equal available, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I had a point, but now
I'm
oh
sorry.
um I don't know if this is totally related to what Barry and I were talking about here a minute ago, but I literally have three examples this year of young adults who are not going to be able to attend the college they got into, or one of their top choices, because they can't do so financially. They're basically stuck between two worlds of their family makes enough money so they don't qualify for various grants. Scholarships are very limited when they get to apply for them. And so they literally are priced out of that given school, which I think is absurd.
It is.
I mean, the cost of college has gone up astronomically in various ways. Not always impossible, because you still have community college transferring and, you know, other careers and stuff you can consider as well. But I saw it with three different kids this year where they got into a fairly, I don't want to say prominent, but a hard school to get into that they were competing with, and they had to decline those offers because they literally it was not going to be a good idea to go, you know, 100 or 120 in debt, um, having very little economic assistance that they needed. So,
I mean,
yeah.
that's true. That's an unfortunate consequence of, you know, how much tuition and all that stuff has gone up, but I think you can still find a good education for an affordable price. I mean, yeah, they can't go to the school of their choice, but not everybody, you know, gets to do their dreams, right? They have to live within their means.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just you can't, when people talk about meritocracy within the society, I I submit that this is a partial example of where it's not as straightforward. And when that affects various communities, if it does statistically, then I just kind of point to it to say, like, is it literally true for all? No. But when you look at who, and again, it depends on the region. It is more regional, not like, national. But who is going to get potentially to not have to make
Anybody
that
would
choice?
ever try to claim that everybody has an equal path. Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah.
anybody would ever make the claim that everybody has an equal path towards success, but they have equal. They have enough opportunities to eventually get there, or maybe for their next generation to get there.
Who has enough opportunities?
It sound like you're saying equal opportunities. Sound like you're about to say equal opportunities.
I was, and then I
You just
corrected
stop
myself.
yourself
Yeah.
there. Nah, I wanted you to just follow through with that.
Good detective work. I stopped myself.
No,
Good
you're
job.
not. I'm gonna push you in that direction.
Go ahead, rant on.
All right, hang on a second, guys. Let me stop for a second. Fuzz, do you want to cover anything else for this day show? Anything, or because we can continue talking, but I don't have to keep recording. So
I mean,
we've veered way off the topic now. So
is there any like significant disagreement left that we have that isn't like semantic? Because I don't think so.
on that topic,
right?
no. So yeah, I don't think so.
Hey, did we solve it? Oh my god!
I think we did.
Well,
Personally, I think it's solved. So
Solve what? Solve what? By the way.
Free will, it's bullshit. So all right.
Watch the video if you want.
We can keep talking. I'm just gonna stop recording. Thanks for everybody for being here today, and let's keep going and keep the conversations going.